Welcome to the second edition of the Wolverine Whisper. Back with Noah Poser and Ryan Krause, here to talk some Michigan basketball and football for you. And it was a great week for both the teams. First, starting with the basketball team, know what to expect. We were on the show last week talking about all of us kind of thought that Michigan might keep it close for a while, then maybe losing a tight win at the end, but it was the exact opposite of that. Michigan dominated from start to finish. They held Villanova to 32%. I thought what was really evident was just the physicality of freshman Ignas Brezdeikis, just locking up on Pascal, Villanova's talented forward. He only shot 3 of 14. It wasn't just Ignas that was guarding him, but Michigan just really made it tough all night for Villanova and just dominated that entire game. And Villanova never really had a chance, and Michigan didn't even shoot particularly well, in that game. I mean, they shot 51%, but they only made 5 threes, but a lot of transition baskets, a lot of driving it to the basket. Ignas and Matthews had a great game. Xavier Simpson, really the catalyst of this team, looking like, he can really lead them in terms of being a leader and just being able to, control a game and really be that floor general that they need. So just all around, they looked really good against Villanova on Wednesday. They couldn't, like I say, Villanova couldn't do much. And then on Saturday, Michigan played in the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame tournament, and they came out with 2 wins over the weekend, one against George Washington on Saturday, and then another one against Providence on Sunday, where, again, neither team really ever had a chance to beat Michigan in either of the games. Saturday, we saw Jordan Poole kind of get hot. He had 4 threes. So that was nice to see because he had struggled out of the gate in the first few games. And then Saturday, Matthews also had a big game. He had 25 against George Washington in a comfortable win. And then Sunday against Providence. Providence is long and athletic and guarded Michigan pretty well, but again, Michigan just totally locked them up. Providence, very few good looks at the basket all game, and Michigan cruised a 19-point victory and were the winners of that tournament over the weekend. So really good performance all in all. Teskey had a career high 17 on Sunday, and and then who else? Ignas Brezdeikis, another great game, 20.7 rebounds for Brezdeikis. So really overall good showing from the basketball team with a 3-0 week. What were your guys' biggest takeaways from Michigan basketball over the last week? Either one of you, it doesn't matter.
Go ahead, Noah.
I think that this defense is going to be even better than it was last year. At least that's what it has looked like throughout this game, throughout this part of the season so far. Obviously, they haven't played any real world beaters. George Washington's not a really good team. Providence might be average at best. Villanova, after losing to Michigan, lost to Furman later in the week. So we don't really know where they're at this moment. But Simpson and Matthews just locked down the perimeter, and Teskey is a huge upgrade in the paint, defending over Mo Wagner was last year. This looks like a defense that's probably going to be one of, if not the best in the country, when it's all said and done.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I found is their ability to put together runs. Like in the Providence game, it was close at the end of the first half, and I think in the last 2 or 3 minutes they went on a 14-2 run. They just hit a couple threes, and then the Livers hit a couple free throws, and you go into the half leading 35-20 instead of being 22-21. So I think that made a big difference in that game, just giving them a cushion to, their offense can get a little stagnant at times, but I think that with the defense that they have, as long as they can put together some scoring spurts, they'll have a lot of success this year.
With we don't really know what kind of competition Michigan's gotten yet, because Villanova does look really raw, and they replaced a lot from last year, like we talked about on the last podcast. So we don't really know how good they are. But Furman is a pretty good mid-major program, so I give them credit for that win. But I think by the end of the year, it'll be a good win for Michigan. The Villanova game, and Providence has had a pretty good program as well over the last few seasons. So you don't really know, but it's just good to see the team just totally dominating, even if they aren't good teams. Winning by an average of 20-some points, over the last 3 games was really encouraging to see. Like I say, if John Teskey can make any type of consistent shot outside, whether it's a mid-range or the 3, kind of like Wagner was able to give over the last few years, then that adds a whole nother dimension to the offense. I think another thing that we saw over the last 3 games is we kind of were wondering who would be that second kind of big man, and Austin Davis really didn't get a lot of playing time over the last 3 games. It was Beeline was he really did. He used Isaiah Livers at the 5 a lot of the time, and went small. And that's another guy who's played outstanding, is Isaiah Livers. Just a very smart basketball player, knows where to go with the ball, doesn't turn it over, takes good shots, plays tough defense, in-your-face defense. But he looks capable of playing the 4 or 5. And when Michigan goes small, it seems like their offense is even a little more dynamic. So I thought that was encouraging to see kind of Beeline get a solid rotation going early in the season. And it really boded well for Michigan, over the last 3 games and over the first 5 games of the season, as they're now 5-0, and they shot into the top 10 in the AP poll, now number 9. So now you have the basketball team and the football team both in the top 10 in the AP polls. So that's the only basketball football duo to have that combination. So very impressive in that aspect. Any other takeaways you guys had from the week it was for Michigan basketball?
I think you covered it there with talking about Isaiah Livers and playing at the 5 and the contributions they're getting from up and down the rotation. They have a solid group of about 8-9 guys that just all contribute when they're on the court, and they play really team-oriented, and it seems to be working really well for them right now.
Yeah, bottom line, when you hold all 3 teams this last week under 40% shooting, you're gonna have a lot of success. If they can continue to do that, they'll see the wins start to really stack up.
Yeah. Like I said, it is just an overall good performance over the week. And then looking ahead to Friday, Michigan has 1 game on the day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday, against Chattanooga, and Chattanooga comes in at 2-4. Doesn't look like they'll be much of a threat to Michigan, but still got to go out and play the game and keep the momentum going. And Noah, you kind of have a little bit of a scouting report on Chattanooga, so why don't you just tell us about what they're going to bring to the game?
So Michigan on Friday has a little bit of a tune-up game for the game coming up against North Carolina next week. They take on Chattanooga at Chrysler. Chattanooga's 2-4. They've lost 3 straight, including a blowout loss to the likes of South Alabama. There's not much talent there. There's not really anything that should challenge Michigan. They like to take a lot of threes. They take 21 3-pointers a game. They don't really make much of them, but they certainly like to shoot them, so you definitely have to pay attention to that if you're the Michigan defense. Their best player so far this season, Kevin Easley, is a forward, averages 15 points per game and 6 rebounds. Secondary scorer is freshman guard Donovan Totley, who averages 11 points per game himself. And then someone to keep an eye on in this game is their center, Thomas Smallwood. He comes from France, and he averages 10 points per game, 9 rebounds per game. He also may be their best outside shooter so far this season. He's shooting 50% from outside, really their only shooter that's taken off so far this season. Really, it should be an easy game for Michigan. Like I said, a tune-up for the game against North Carolina coming up next week. But if there's anything to watch out for, it's if you limit the amount of threes they can make, then they won't really pose much of a threat outside of that aspect of the game.
Yeah, I think it'll be, a nice tune-up game for Michigan, like you say, Noah, and and the North Carolina game will be another big out-of-conference test. Kind of to see where Michigan is early in the season, and we'll preview that game on our next episode. But really a lot of good things to like from the basketball program. Every year the media fans seem to underestimate this team. I think this is the best we've seen Michigan basketball look early in the season, maybe since 2013 when they went off. I think started 15-0 and something like that, where they got to the number 1 in the AP polls. So for the first time in forever. So, but even the last few years under Beeline, when he's had really good teams, they haven't looked this good early. And I think this team has really meshed and gelled and found an identity early on in the season, which hasn't been accustomed with Beeline's teams lately. They've kind of come on later in the season, but I mean, it's good to see right now. Obviously, long season to go, but great start. A very encouraging sign for Beeline's team. Then kind of transitioned over to football. Obviously, it's Michigan Ohio State week. Huge week for Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan football program, looking to win the Big Ten East for the first time, looking to get to the Big Ten championship game. Winner of the Michigan Ohio State game goes to Indianapolis to play Northwestern. So a lot of stakes on the line, and this is exactly what you want the Michigan Ohio State game to be. With everything on the line, with one of the greatest rivalries in sports. So can't ask for much more in that regard. And I just kind of want to look back on the Indiana game for a minute. It was a game that Michigan really struggled in a lot of aspects, especially scoring in the red zone. They could have put Indiana away maybe middle of third quarter if they would have taken advantage of some of those chances inside the 20-yard line early. The Patterson pass to Gentry in the first half was, really memorable. And probably a pass that Gentry should have came up with, and Patterson kind of threw off his back foot. Should have given him a better throw, but you got to convert on that. And then just the way Indiana was able to run the ball, 190 yards rushing. Michigan did a better job in the second half against Stevie Scott, but he still carried it for 139 yards on 30 carries. So no, it was a struggle. The one positive for the Michigan defense was they did hold Peyton Ramsey to 16 of 35, under 50% completion percentage. So their pass defense continues to be really good. And it's just kind of a grinded out game where Michigan had to just fight and scratch and come away with a victory. Couple other notable things in that game is Chase Winovich. The initial report or kind of rumor on Twitter is that he had a broken collarbone, and then Harbaugh came out and said that the MRI was negative and nothing's broken. So the status on Winovich is still unclear. It's kind of hurt on I think he got hurt before Indiana's offensive lineman came and gave him the extra shot, but there was a lot of fans not happy with that, with the play of Indiana and, kicking the ball at the end of the first half. And I thought there were me personally, I thought there were a lot of things that Indiana did that was kind of, that's not right. But regardless, other thing, Patterson was 16 of 28 for 250 yards. He has 68 yards on the ground, which was encouraging. They had to run him a little more because the game was close. I don't think Harbaugh wanted to, but they kind of had to do it. And but Michigan came away with a 11-point win at home. What was Ryan or Noah? What was your guys' assessment of that game over the weekend?
Missed opportunities. I think that that's a big thing. Like you touched on, when it's all fine and dandy that Moody went 6 for 6 on field goal attempts, but you gotta convert on those. I mean, you pointed out the Gentry pass. That's something you gotta get 6 on the board there. Those are key things I think that you can get away with against a lesser team like Indiana, but that's not going to happen against Ohio State. I mean, they're going to put up points. They average over 35 points a game, so it's going to be tough if you continue to get 3 for every one of their 6. So
Yeah, I think from this game, looking back at it, really no position group really executed to the capability that they obviously are able to. Maybe except for the field goal unit with Cheeseman and Will Hart and Moody kicking. But no, the defense had its struggles certainly against the run, which hasn't happened for quite a bit, maybe since the Wisconsin game. They haven't struggled that bad. And then they really struggled defending the middle of the field, which wasn't something we've seen since the safeties have really stepped up their level of play this season. So really, there wasn't much there that was encouraging from this game, but it was against Indiana. Indiana typically plays them close. They still won the game, and it's better that they struggle against Indiana than they make these same mistakes against a team like Ohio State. So it's better to just get it out of the way now and completely focus on Ohio State and be able to compete to the max of their abilities in that game.
yeah, I definitely thought everybody talks about it might have been a trap game, might have not been, but they definitely got their clunker out of the way, which is nice. So if there's any game where you're gonna hit 6 field goals and only score 2 touchdowns, this is the one. You want to be able to make those conversions in other games, so, and especially against Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is, like you say, Ryan, they got it out of the way, but now looking ahead, I mean, that Indiana game, it's irrelevant now. You got everything. You're playing for everything now, on Saturday against Ohio State. So it doesn't even matter really how either team played last Saturday. And then speaking of that, I just want to hit on the Ohio State-Maryland game as well. I mean, what a wild, crazy game, especially finish to that game. 52-51, Ohio State came out with a win, gave up something like almost 280 yards rushing in the first half to Maryland. Maryland had huge plays the entire game, and it's really not a big play offense. You don't think of Maryland as some juggernaut offensively, and that yet they time and time again, the whole game they're making these huge plays against Ohio State's defense, and Ohio State looked lost, especially on some of the run plays, and and in the secondary, giving receivers 15, 20 yards, where there's no one around them at all. So then Maryland goes for 2 in overtime, which I love that call by Canada. I think if you're the lesser team, I've always believed you go for 2 there in that situation, but wish they did. And I was kind of watching the game, and as Big Rome rolled out, you put him in the run pass option, which is good. And I saw the guy open. I kind of jumped out of my couch and went, oh, they won. And then he just airmails the guy by 6 yards over his head. So, no, that was Urban Meyer called it a barn burner or something like that, or something. I don't know the exact quote, but I don't know if it was that. It was just it was really a poorly played defensive game by both teams. But we kind of seen that from Ohio State, this year. It's just they feel like a 9-3 or an 8-4 team that's 10-1. So I mean, they really haven't peaked. I mean, I think these are two totally these teams have a different feel to them, kind of coming in this game. But obviously, Ohio State isn't going to lay down. It's not going to be easy for Michigan to go in and win. But just the feel overall of the game is that Michigan, if they come out and play like they need to play, then they're going to win this game on Saturday. How do you guys feel about that?
One of the Go ahead, Noah.
So coming into this game, Michigan leads this series 58-49-6. And that even takes into account the fact that Ohio State has won 6 straight and 13 of the last 14 meetings in the series. Obviously, last season, Michigan lost by double digits in a game that was probably closer on Michigan's end than it probably should have been with their struggles at the quarterback position. But really, this game comes down to, can Michigan take advantage of Ohio State's sloppy defense while also containing Haskins in that dynamic Ohio State offense? Haskins has probably been one of, if not the best player in college football this season. He has 3,700 passing yards already, 40 total touchdowns, just 7 interceptions. They have that two-headed monster in Dobbins and Weber in the backfield. They're combining for over 1,600 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns. Honestly, they might have one of the best, if not the best, receiving core in the nation. You got KJ Hill, Paris Campbell, Terry McLaurin, Johnny Dixon. They all have 5 touchdown catches or more. So that's going to be very important for Michigan to be able to lock them down. Lavert Hill, David Long, Brandon Watson. Try to keep away the big play threat, make them sustain drives instead of just getting chunk plays. And I mean, this defense for Ohio State has obviously looked just awful in some of their recent games. Obviously, the Purdue game, Purdue lit them up. Maryland, Anthony McFarland for Maryland just ran for almost 300 yards against them. Like, they're definitely susceptible through the air and on the ground. Like, they haven't been able to stop anybody. Michigan has shown a lot of improvement on offense this year, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on, because this is probably going to be a pretty high-scoring game despite Michigan's great defense. So Michigan's offense is also going to have to pick up the slack a little bit and come out better than probably they're used to having to be.
Yeah, I think Michigan, they are going to be challenged with Dwayne Haskins. He's a great quarterback, like you were touching on, Noah. He's definitely the best quarterback they've seen this year. A lot of people have been like, oh, who has Michigan played? Who's the best quarterback they've played? I mean, they go out there, they play the guys that are on their schedule, and those are the cards you dealt, really. You got to play the guys that are in front of you. So, but Dwayne Haskins is definitely going to be the best pure passer they've seen, and I don't think he causes too much trouble with his feet, but they can't just abandon that and have him, start become this JT Barrett clone or something like that, picking up key third downs that extend drives that lead to scores. So you really got to contain him. And J.K. Dobbins, I think he carried the ball 37 times last game against Maryland. So I don't know what exactly happened to Mike Weber. I don't even think he registered a carry. But if Dobbins is going to be taking the ball most times, then you're really going to have to plan for that. He's a dynamic back, and last year he had over 100 yards rushing against Michigan, so you really got to plan for, I think, those two. And then obviously they have a ton of playmakers at receiver too, so it's not going to be Don Brown's easiest task, but I think he'll be up to the task.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you mentioned something about Dobbins, because he's obviously a super talented running back, and but I thought I don't know if it's just me or they had him put on like a massive amount of muscle like over the off season. And I'm watching some of the games, and in games where Ohio State has struggled to run the ball, it's almost like he doesn't have that explosiveness, to get to the outside anymore. Obviously he's still fast, but he's not a guy they can swing it out, out of the backfield and kind of get out into space. And, they have other guys who can do that. But I thought it was interesting kind of this season to see Dobbins get so built, and I think it kind of took away from his game a little bit, I don't know if he's as good as in between the tackles, as he was outside. I mean, obviously with his strength now, he can be good in between the tackles runner, but I thought his strength was always, getting to the outside and making teams, beating teams like that. But it's just something I noticed. And then I think one thing that bodes well for Michigan is the fact that, Patterson has become more of a runner as the season has gone on, and Harbaugh's incorporated that in the offense. And Ohio State, especially going back to the Penn State game, McSorley beat them on the same designed run all game long, and Ohio State really struggled to defend that. And if Patterson, I think this is a game where Patterson can go over 100 yards on the ground. I don't think he's done that yet this season, but I think, Michigan will kind of unload the whole bag of tricks on offense and, kind of unload the whole arsenal. And if they take care of the ball and they, establish the run game early, get the receivers involved down the field and play action, then if Michigan gets to 30, I see them, which I think they'll be able to. I see them winning the game. I think there's too many weapons there and too many vulnerabilities on Ohio State's defense to be able to contain Michigan's offense. But on the flip side, I thought it was a little bit concerning against Indiana, where Michigan kind of let some of those short passes and man coverage kind of go for big yardage at times. Indiana they'd line the receiver on the outside and then clear out the other two guys on one side of the formation, and Michigan have to follow in man coverage all the way across the field. And if they blitz Devin Bush from the middle and left the middle vacant, then Indiana took advantage of that a few times. So with the speed of Paris Campbell and KJ Hill and guys like that, Michigan's really going to have to watch for that and, maybe pull back on the blitzing, on the third and longs, and kind of keep the ball in front of them, make sure they don't give up the big play like Noah said. So, there's definitely interesting matchups to watch for. I was kind of interested to know what is the one matchup Michigan has to win, kind of to win this game. What do you guys think?
I would definitely say the matchup that they have to win is their cornerbacks against those receivers because, like I said, these receivers are some of the most dynamic receivers in all of college football. And obviously Michigan's cornerbacks have played almost as well as any other group of cornerbacks in the country. So I think that's definitely the one spot where I'm going to be keeping my eye on as to what will decide the game. Whose strength is stronger, the receivers of Ohio State or the defensive backs of Michigan?
Yeah, I'm looking at Michigan's defensive line. If they can cause some disruption to Haskins, put him on his back a couple times early, I think that's going to help. I don't think he'll be able to set his feet as much and deliver to those receivers. So I think that's only going to help the corners. If they can get some sustained pressure on Haskins most of the game, then they got a good chance to nullify a little bit of the big playability or even just getting it into their playmakers' hands. So,
yeah, I think we've seen Ohio State where they've struggled in games this year is when Haskins hasn't had much time to throw. I think if Michigan can get to the quarterback consistently with 4, then it's going to be tough for Ohio State to move the ball the entire game. One point I would make about Indiana last week in Saturday's game, I thought that was the best offensive line Michigan's played all season. Is kind of surprising to me. But unless, obviously part of it might have been just Michigan not playing up to standard either. But I thought Indiana, they had some guys up there who could really pass protect for Peyton Ramsey. Especially Wisconsin's offensive line, really good in the run game, but they were on Hornibrook all night long when Michigan played them early in the season. So I thought Indiana had the most impressive offensive line that Michigan's played maybe. But as far as Ohio State, I haven't seen that type of play from their offensive line. I saw them against Minnesota, they got beat time and time again. And, they put Haskins on his back several times, just getting off the edge and getting to him with 4. So if Michigan can win up there, and we'll see if, I don't know if Winovich will go, but I think that's one thing that also plays into Michigan's favor is Josh Uche getting so much playing time and kind of filling in for Gary when he was out, and he has so many reps. I think he might be I think he's faster than Gary off the ball. He can really get off the edge. He doesn't have the power Rashawn Gary has, but in terms of speed, he can get off the ball with the best of them. So if Michigan can make it tough on Haskins with 4 and drop 7 into coverage, then it's going to be tough for Ohio State's offense to move the ball. Now, if they can't get to him, then I might have a different story. Ohio State might have a day on offense, but that's going to be the one matchup I'm looking for. Like you said, Ryan, that'll be maybe the biggest determining factor in who wins this game. So, anything else you guys want to add? Just looking forward, to this huge game, obviously.
I think that this game is definitely going to be a really close game. I personally am not one of those people saying that, Ohio State has looked off recently, so they're not going to, Michigan should run all over them. I think this is going to be a very, very close game. Urban Meyer 6-0 against Michigan. Jim Harbaugh is 0-3 versus Ohio State. I think Urban Meyer would like to keep it that way. They definitely have the talent to do so if they manage to play up to their talent. I think this game definitely comes down to who can make a defensive stop late. I think Michigan has a much better defense than Ohio State. So I think that this game will probably come down to Michigan probably making a late stop when Ohio State has the ball in order to preserve a lead to win this game. So that's how I think this game is going to end up playing out.
Yeah,
anything, Ned?
It almost seems like shades of 2011, where you got, the score of that game was 40-34, and it took a defensive stop and interception by Courtney Avery to win that game. So I could see that definitely happening, like you said, Noah. I don't know. I think that Michigan, they got a pretty good defense, and they're gonna. It's gonna be a good game. There's always something that happens that's unexpected. So I guess we'll see what happens there. There's always something that goes on, or some player that shows out a little bit more than he usually does. So
yeah, and there's just a couple more things I want to touch on. Just Ryan, you mentioned earlier Jake Moody with the 6 field goals. It almost is certain that he looks like he'll be the kicker going forward. It'll be interesting to see how he reacts in a game, like this. Obviously, like I said, a big game. See if he gets. Hopefully, he won't have a chance to, have a pressure kick at the end. But you never know. Or if it's. So we were kind of talking about this before the show, but maybe we see Nardine, on a 50-plus yard field goal if it comes down to that. If Michigan needs something like that late in the game, so we'll see how that plays out. And then earlier on Monday, Karan Higdon, he's kind of asked by a reporter, would you go as far as to guarantee, a victory against Ohio State? And he basically said, yeah, I believe in my team, and I'll take that. I'll take that responsibility as a captain to go out and say that we're going to beat the team. So, or beat Ohio State. So some people don't like that. I was just kind of, I personally like it. I think it kind of resembles the personality of this team and the character of this team, that they're kind of, they're not overconfident, but they're very confident in themselves and their ability. And, they can't. Chase Winovich, called out Wisconsin after that game and called in a revenge tour, then called out Michigan State and after the game. So, I mean, there's this kind of boastful pride that is with this team, but I mean, it kind of fits their identity, and they're kind of, it kind of feels like they're out for blood. So to kind of pull back on that, I think would be wrong for this team to do, because I think they have that momentum, and they kind of feed off of each other's attitudes and confidence. So what's your guys' feeling about Higdon making the so-called guarantee for Saturday's game?
Oh, I would
better back it up.
Yeah, I would have been ashamed if he didn't. He's better. I hope he goes over 100 yards and he just runs the ball down Ohio State's throat. I mean, they've played, like I said last week on the last episode, they've played with such a swagger this year that they had the ability to back it up. They just need to go out and do it. So I think this is the revenge tour. What better time to say, yeah, we're going to go out and beat Ohio State. We're going to get our coach, Jim Harbaugh, his first victory against Ohio State, and then who knows, maybe go on a roll from there.
I'm not really much of a. I don't really like when players go and guarantee victories against other teams, especially a team that's your biggest rival. Not that they need any more motivation, but it's just another thing that they'll look to as they sort of get ready for the game on Saturday. But if Karan Higdon is going to go out and make this sort of declaration and guarantee victory, he better come out on Saturday and have the game of his life to make sure that happens. Because if he doesn't, a lot of that's going to come back on him.
Yeah, I think, obviously, like you say, no, when you make a prediction or a guarantee like that, you got to come out and perform. But I think he will. I mean, I think he's obviously been one of the better running backs in the Big Ten and in the nation. So, he's got to come out and deliver, and we'll see what he does. It'll be interesting to see that. And then we kind of we had some mailbag questions for our for the show. A few they came from fellow MSE writers. So the first one I'm looking at is from Chase from he's a writer for MSE. He asked, what exactly does Michigan need to do during the game in order to beat Ohio State, and how can Michigan overcome their weaknesses in order to secure a victory? One of you guys can go ahead and answer that first.
Go ahead, Noah.
Michigan just needs to execute their game plan. They definitely have all the weapons they need on offense in order to expose this leaky Ohio State defense. If they just, their O-line has shown massive improvement over the season. Ohio State's rush defense is pretty questionable. If they can just stick to their game plan and just pound the ball down Ohio State's throat, then they should be all set up to be able to open up the offense and take shots down the field, get chunk plays, expose the secondary of Ohio State, which hasn't been all that great itself either. So offensively, that's what they have to do. Defensively, like I said, they have to match up on the outside with these talented wide receivers. They have to get after Haskins. Haskins has been a lot less effective when he's been under pressure this season. And if you let him have an open, clean pocket, he's going to torch you all game long. And weaknesses-wise, honestly, I think that their biggest weakness this season has probably been their kicking game. And last week, Moody had a great game. So if Moody comes out on Saturday, gets the start, and is able to execute as effectively as he was last week, then I think they have all the tools in order to come out and get a victory this weekend.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that they need to do to beat OSU is win the turnover battle. That's going to be the biggest thing. If you go out there and play sloppy, you got interceptions, fumbles, you can't hold on to the ball all of a sudden, it's going to be a long day because Ohio State's going to make you pay. And just keep the time of possession so you keep the ball out of Haskins' hands and the Ohio State's offense hands. I mean, as long as you do that, I think they have a good chance. Like in 2016, it doesn't even come down to JT was short or whatever on that play. If they make some plays and don't make some silly turnovers deep in their own territory or something like that, that's what I'm going to be looking for, is just a mistake-free game. And they've done that pretty well throughout the years, so I think that they have an opportunity again in this game to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And the one weakness, I think Don Brown has a love affair with man defense. They play it really well. They're coached up really well, the corners and stuff like that, but I think it leaves them a little vulnerable over the middle of the field when they just match up man on the receivers. So that's the one thing. Maybe if they mix in a little bit of zone, that they can maybe create a few plays that way on defense.
Yeah. Yeah, JT was short though, Ryan. Just for the record.
Yeah.
You can't tell Michigan fan that, and but I agree that game was Michigan made their fair share of mistakes in
Yeah.
2016
Oh yeah,
to
they definitely
really
had opportunities to.
to put them away earlier.
Yep.
But yeah, I guess we touched on a lot of the things that Michigan, what they need to do in order to win. I just wanted to kind of touch on, I get the weaknesses part. What is Michigan's biggest weakness? I guess one of them. Noah mentioned the kicking game, so I'm gonna say like we saw last weekend, inability to finish some drives. I think kind of how they overcome that. I think like we've seen against Ohio State all year is make the big play. If Michigan can get 2 or 3 of those big plays for touchdowns, and they have the receivers to do it, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Nico Collins, Tariq Black, can get down the field and beat Ohio State's secondary down the field, then that's gonna play a big part in Michigan being able to put up points in the game. So yeah, when they get inside the 20, they need to finish drives with touchdowns, hopefully. But I think this is the game for Donovan Peoples-Jones, Nico Collins, like I say, Tariq Black, the big athletic wide receivers who can get downfield to have a big day. So that's what I'm looking for Michigan. The second question is from Christian, also from the MSE staff. He asked if Michigan is going to win against Ohio State, what one player on each side of the ball is going to have a big day? You guys can answer that again.
Offensively, I think this is the time where Shea Patterson has to come out and show why he was such a heralded transfer coming over from Ole Miss. If he can be effective taking those deep shots down the field, as well as on the ground, exposing the MSU run defense with some read option, I think that will be the easiest way for them to win. Obviously, Hinkton has to be good, but if Patterson can take those deep shots and connect on those deep shots, I think that Michigan has a way higher chance of winning if he's able to connect on those than if they just pound the ball, try to play conservative. I think they definitely need some of those deep shots in order to win the game. And then defensively, I would say Devin Bush probably has to be the most effective in this game. Devin Bush was just named a finalist for the Dick Butkus Award for best linebacker in college football. We've seen what he can do all season. Probably the fastest linebacker in all of college football. But Dobbins and Weber are very dynamic coming out of the backfield. They're able to go sideline to sideline and go up the middle. I think the linebackers have to be really effective into just playing their assignments, making sure they get Dobbins and Weber down before they can break off big plays in the run game. Because if they're breaking off big plays in the run game, then that just opens it up even more for their passing game. So I think if Devin Bush and the linebacking core as a whole, really, if they just do their jobs, I think it will make this game way easier, just having the run game stopped and just making them pass the ball.
I'd say on offense, yeah, I'm gonna side with you there, Noah. I think that Shea Patterson has to have a big day with, like you said, with his feet and with his arm. He's gonna have to be able to limit turnovers, don't throw interceptions, hang on to the ball security, and just play within yourself. Make the plays that are in front of you. Don't try and force anything. You guys got a lot of playmakers out there, and I think Michigan and Shea Patterson can have a big day on Saturday, and I think that's the biggest key for me is how Patterson plays during the game. And on defense, I'm going to go 2 for here. I think Lavert Hill and David Long have to play. They have to play lights out. I mean, I think the Ohio State offense really revolves around Haskins in the passing game. He's obviously thrown for a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns, 38 touchdowns on the year. So they're going to have to be able to lock up the Paris Campbell and all those guys for Ohio State. If they can do that, then I think the run defense for Michigan is pretty good, and they'll be able to contain Dobbins and Weber.
Yeah, I think like you say, I think Patterson have to have a big day offensively, like you guys say. But I think almost the biggest key I feel like on the offensive side of the ball is if Karan Higdon can get loose often and early, it's going to take so much pressure off of Patterson to be able to, and I'm confident that he's, he'll play within himself and the moment won't be too big for him. But if Higdon can have a huge day and Michigan doesn't really have to shoulder, and rely on Patterson to make a bunch of plays and use his legs or whatever, then Michigan's just going to keep pounding the rock with Higdon, and it's going to make things a lot easier. So I think that's one thing to look for early, because if Higdon gets going early and Ohio State shows they cannot stop that, then Michigan's going to have a good day. And I think like I say, if he gets going, then I think that's the biggest key, because it takes so much pressure off for everyone else to have to make plays and do as much. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I'm gonna go in a little different direction. I think in these type of games, your star players, your so-called stars, they got to shine. And I think Rashawn Gary is that guy for Michigan. Projected top 5, top 10 pick. This one of those games. I know he gets double teamed all the time, but fight through them, fight through the double teams, do whatever you got to do. Get to the quarterback, get a couple sacks. These are the games that players like Rashawn Gary have to come and shine in, and obviously a great player from Michigan, and if he can be disruptive for on Dwayne Haskins, then it's gonna bode well for Michigan. Yeah, and then third question, I kind of touched on this a little bit, but it's from Brett, also a writer at Michigan Sports and Entertainment. He asked, "Does Michigan stick with Moody the rest of the way?" What do you guys think? Is Moody still going to be the kicker going forward?
Honestly, this is a tough one, because I think Quinn Nordine is probably the better kicker, but obviously over the past few weeks, confidence has been a huge issue. He's been very inconsistent with his kicks. A lot of knuckleball looking type kicks for probably the team's liking. He's just been super inconsistent. Obviously, last week he didn't play. Harbaugh said he was sick. He wasn't ready to go. So Moody came in, went 6 for 6, set the program record for most field goals made in a game, breaking a record, ironically, that Quinn Nordine shared when he made 5 earlier in his career. But Quinn Nordine, we know he has a leg. We haven't seen Moody really kick a long field goal yet. So it'd be really interesting to see if at any point in the game, if we have like an opportunity to have like a 53, 55-yard field goal, what they do there. Moody can probably kick that, but he also hasn't been playing for very long. He's only attempted, obviously, the 6 field goals last game. He hasn't attempted a kick close to that distance. We've seen Nordine make these kicks in the past, and in a clutch situation, do you want to have the guy who has made such kicks in the past, although maybe struggling a little bit with confidence, or someone like Moody who hasn't attempted a single one of those kicks? So I think that will be really interesting to see who comes out there on Saturday. Obviously, Moody, with his performance last week, showed that he deserves the job, although you never really know what's going to happen with Jim Harbaugh and his decisions.
Yeah, for this, it's tough, but I'm going to go with riding the hot hand. You got a guy that just made 6 in a row. He's probably riding really high on confidence. I mean, that's quite the accomplishment, hitting 6 field goals. And I think going into the horseshoe, if you got to make a kick, then why not put him out there? He's shown that he's got the ability to hit a field goal. So I say stick with the hot hand and hope for the best. I mean, you hope it doesn't come down to a field goal at the end of the game, but I would put Moody out there.
Yeah, I think that was one of the more underrated coaching decisions that Harbaugh made as well was, having the guts to go to Moody. And I know he said Nardine was sick, but he was out there warming up against Indiana. He hit some total shanks. So maybe he was sick and maybe that's part of the reason, but I'm thinking some of it was, he just had not kicked the ball well lately. So, but yeah, like you guys say, it'll be interesting. We don't really know Moody's range yet. All of them are shorter, kind of shorter field goals. So like Noah said, it'll be interesting to see who they run out there, if they need a 45-plus yard field goal. But, but as far as, just in general, you go with Moody. He's like you say, Ryan, he's the hot hand, and you just stick with that, and I think he's your best chance. And then to kind of wrap it up, you guys want to make some predictions? I'm going to make a prediction, so let's do it. I'm going 34-24. Michigan wins in this game. What do you guys got?
I'll go Michigan 38, Ohio State 35. I think it'll be a classic like the 2016 game, and it'll be close throughout the entire game. Come down to Michigan going down and getting a game-winning touchdown with under a minute remaining.
I say that the score in this one's going to be 27-24. I think Ohio State's going to have the ball late, but I think ultimately Michigan is going to come up with a big stop in order to preserve that victory and get to the Big Ten championship game for the first time in years.
Yeah, obviously a lot of things on the line in this game. People talked about after the Notre Dame game in week, everyone was upset with the program and upset with Harbaugh and, screaming and yelling about everything. But Michigan's done what they needed to do to put themselves in this position. And, as a fan, you got to feel good about the position that they're in and the season that they've had. I think in this game in particular, I think Michigan's going to get some of those big plays offensively. I think Ohio State will be able to move the ball a little bit with the playmakers they have. But, I just, like I say, if Michigan breaks 30, I see them winning the game. I don't think anyone's really come close to scoring 30 against Michigan all year outside of Notre Dame. They scored, 24 in week 1, and then, not much doing after that for the offenses against Michigan. Obviously, Ohio State's a different animal, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, I've got Michigan, kind of pulling away in the fourth and coming away with a 10-point win. So we'll see what happens. Looking forward to it on Saturday. Thanks for listening to the second episode of Wolverine Whisper. I'm Seth Berry with Ryan Krause and Noah Poser, and thank you guys again for listening. You can cut it.